Well, do you want to start or do you want me to?
Yeah, I can swarm myself up. Unique New York.
Unique New York.
Unique New York. Welcome to this episode of Think Like a Producer. Now, we've talked about the reasons that podcasts die. We've talked about misconceptions about podcasting. We've given you a lot of great reality checks, and we might do that again actually within this episode. But we want to talk about the reasons why you should make your show, why you should have a podcast. There is room for that, for you to actually express yourself, for you to get your vision out there. And we're going to talk about it today on this episode.
Yeah, this is a real thing. We are constantly talking to people who are on the verge of starting a podcast, and the main questions are always the same, like how much of a workload, how expensive, is it worth it to try and throw my hat in the ring, or can I never be as good as the people that I see already doing it? And the truth is, the longer that I'm in this industry, going on my 7th or 8th year now, I am more and more convinced that the best way to podcast is the way that you podcast. There is so much happening that's kind of related to networks and professional shows and big money. That's not ever going to be most of us. I really am thinking of podcasting the way I think of Instagram or blogging. It's very unique to each person. Everyone uses the medium differently. You don't look at Instagram and be like, there's one way to Instagram. There's not one way to TikTok. There's not one way to be on Pinterest, right? But I think with podcasting, since it's a little more involved with production, people think, oh, there's only one way to do it. And if I'm not doing it the way that the big wigs are doing it, I'm not doing it right. Well, that's simply not true. The best shows are very unique. They legitimately are unrepeatable. And it's because of the people who are making them, not because of like the genius idea they had of the special format that magically does everything. So I believe this more and more and more. When I see a new podcast that a friend or an associate of mine comes out with, and I listen to an episode, of course I try to listen to at least one episode of every new show that a friend does. I'm so excited and I want to support them. So I try to always listen to at least an episode. What I love about every new show I hear is how it's totally that person's show. They can't, extricate themselves from it, nor should they. And so I get really excited when people come out with shows and I can tell this has them all over it. Whether it's the way they're talking, the way they've edited, the music they've chosen, the topic, the length. It doesn't matter any of that as long as it's really aligned with that person, their vibe, their energy. And so I'm going to just echo what Tiff said and say it's way more important to start a show that feels sustainable to you, that feels really fun, that's keeping your enthusiasm high because you actually enjoy making it. These are all secrets to avoiding burnout. The quick road to burnout is to try to emulate someone that you think you're supposed to be like. It will just burn you out so fast because you will never be as good at being like them as you will at being like yourself. And so this is a very legitimate point we had written down in our outline for today's episode. This isn't fluffy. Yeah, it's a little bit of emotional intelligence, but it's really essential. And having worked on some shows for years now, and having worked on my own show for years now, I'm really seeing this more and more and more. The shows that really do good work consistently over the long haul and end up becoming really successful are the ones that stuck to a format and a cadence and a style that was truly what they loved doing. It was unique to them. Some of my very favorite shows have absolutely no music, no intro, nothing. Literally the person hits record and they just start talking, and that is the episode. Rob Bell is one that comes to mind. He's an incredible author, speaker, former pastor, and I've listened to his show for a few years now. He is an excellent speaker, but he is himself to a T. He has absolutely no music. There's no bumper, there's no outro, there's no, he pushes record and he starts talking, and he has an outline. He's very well experienced in, writing things like sermons and essays, but there's nothing fancy. And he doesn't edit his show at all. You sometimes hear his kid in the background, or if he's in his back house in his, backyard in LA, there might be a helicopter going by. He's not bothered with editing any of that. And it's so him. If you've ever heard him speak in person or on, social media, he doesn't do a lot on social media. That's Rob. Like, he is just himself, kind of singing to his own little beat. So that's, yes, it's a word of encouragement, but it's actually based in solid evidence that I've seen. I have noticed on the other side when clients of mine who have been podcasting for a while start to get burned out, their enthusiasm starts to wane. They take longer and longer breaks. They're getting episodes to me, last minute. And it's because a lot of times I notice like they're starting to really get in the comparison game. And then, when I kind of have a heart to heart with them, I'm like, what if we just went back to you doing the thing that you really are good at the way you do it? Let's forget about all this. And it's consistently this like sigh of relief, like, oh my gosh, I forgot. Thank you. That feels so much better. So there's my 2 cents about making the show that feels sustainable, that's very authentic, that doesn't need to look or follow the format of other people's. We are always going to share with you ideas on this show because we want you to have plenty of resources if you're starting out. It does not mean you need to follow them. You don't need to have an intro. You don't need to have music. Like, if that's not your thing, don't worry about it. If it is your thing, have fun with it. Okay, well, I don't know how long I went on that, but number 2, there's another point we want to emphasize, and this has to do with monetization. And you may be like, why are you talking to me about monetization if we're talking about reasons to have the show I want? Well, we just want to kind of put into context that if you're trying to build a show based on other people's revenue models, like you've heard influencers say, like, I'm getting 1 million downloads and the sponsor revenue is incredible and I'm making 5 figures or 6 figures a month off my podcast and it's so easy. Well, let's just give you some numbers so that you're not inaccurately understanding what they're saying, thinking, I have to do a show just like so-and-so so that I can make thousands of dollars in sponsor revenue or I'm a failure. Tiff, tell us about the actual numbers required to be making money off of YouTube.
10,000 subscribers. Don't get overwhelmed. 10,000 subscribers before you can really monetize the channel. And even then, it's a lot. It's based on views, how many people are watching, how long they're staying, how many ads, you can actually add to the video. And think about this. I think about this every time I go through YouTube. There's so many ads on YouTube. And of course, YouTube, don't shut us down. We love your platform. But there's just so many ads that you can add in the middle of an episode, beginning of the episode, end of the episode. And I think, making sure that you're speaking true to the content over the money is always going to be the priority. Now, there have been shows that we've worked on that have 2-hour plus interviews. To me, you can put a couple ads in there and you're still going to have some pretty good content. But for an 8-minute vlog or 5-minute quick video, to have 4 or 5 ads in that video, are you still serving the audience? Are you still giving them what they want, or are you trying to grab as much cash as possible? Not saying one is better than the other, just thinking about like the idea of just taking the numbers out of your head, taking the pressure off of like, I got to get to this crazy viral video. I got to have 1 million views for every video, or like, I'm just not good enough. The podcast wasn't a success. The YouTube channel wasn't a success. Like, we would just love to just kind of give you a moment to just breathe into the idea that you can just have fun with this. Let the subscribers come, let the audience come. We, of course, will have episodes about how to grab those kinds of people to make sure that you're hitting the audience and you're taking care of the people that want to find you, that want to see you, that want to consume your content. But really to just like linger on the idea of having fun with it without trying to always go for the numbers, always go for the results. And really, who is this affecting? Who's really seeing this? Who's really enjoying this? Who am I impacting right now? We talked about this on episode 17, like really like what makes good content, the people that I'm impacting and how I'm supporting them to impact the world and make it a better place. So yes, you need to have a lot of numbers, a lot of views. You're always going to be checking your YouTube analytics. It's always going to be there. Your show is always going to be growing, but YouTube rewards consistency and posting your show and posting videos weekly and getting things going. So be a little more concerned about how I'm going to stay enthusiastic, like we talked about in kind of like our part one here, how I'm going to really enjoy this show week after week, day after day, to really continue with it. Because the more I'm consistent, the more these numbers will grow. And then when I get to that 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 subscribers, and I'm really starting to get, a couple of dollars in here and there from YouTube, it'll just be an after effect, not necessarily the number one reason why I decided to start the show. But Christine, you know all about the podcast numbers. So for the podcast numbers, let's throw a quick reality check when it comes to numbers and money and making money off of your show.
Yeah, I would love to. It's honestly very helpful. So, industry standard in audio podcasting when it comes to sponsors or advertisers, these is going to be like if you're getting sponsor deals through your hosting network, or if you're actually listed with a network or an agency, your probably average starting rate is going to be $20 per 1,000 downloads for an episode. So, if you do the math, even if you got 5,000 downloads on an episode, you're only making $100 on that one episode. And so I always tell people, really don't worry about sponsorships and advertising until you're getting thousands upon thousands of downloads per episode. Like 10,000 is like probably similar to YouTube. Until you're really getting about 10,000 downloads per episode, you really don't need to be messing around with outside sponsors, because is it really worth it? You got $100 from that episode and you had 5,000 downloads. Like, there's so much more you can do with 5,000 listeners than just make $100 off of an outside sponsor ad. And we cover monetization strategies separate from sponsors in our membership group. So if you really are interested in this and you want more like feedback and Q&A and strategy, feel free to join our membership group, because that's a better place where we can kind of give you individual coaching. But just as the basic reality check, that's the kind of numbers you're looking at. So like Tiff said, just like with a YouTube channel, with an audio podcast, it's going to pay off way more to just really focus on making content you love and enjoy that serves your audience, that organically builds it. And there's all sorts of things you can promote to your audience long before you'd be in a position to take on outside advertisers. Now, the asterisk here being, if you're already a very well-established brand who has sponsor relationships, maybe you've been very successful with a social media following, so you've already had some experience doing sponsored ads on your social media or affiliates, like if you have a great email list, something like that, of course you might be able to kind of run to the head of the line and get some direct sponsorship deals earlier on. And if you're that person, right? So if you're working on a show that already has good sponsor relationships from another channel that you produce content on, you can definitely negotiate deals for your podcast before you have thousands of downloads per episode. But again, you know who you are. So that's a different scenario. If, like most people, if you're starting a podcast and you have no connection to companies and sponsors and brand deals, those are just kind of the numbers to let yourself relax and be like, I'm not even going to think about that for a while. And I'm going to focus on building this community in a way that I really love. And it's a lot of fun. And again, there's a lot of ways to monetize your podcast pre-sponsors, but you can definitely DM us, or if you want more information and kind of get group coaching, you can definitely join the membership group. Link in the show notes. Okay, so point number 3 about reasons to make the show that you want to make. Tiff, tell us what another compelling argument is to stop worrying about what other people think and focus on what brings you joy.
So we basically mentioned this throughout the episode, to just let go of comparison and just start creating. And Christine and I didn't talk about this before we started this episode, but Christine, what do you think about a challenge for all of our listeners right now, our viewers right now, to create before you consume? So we've been around a lot of great entrepreneurs, a lot of cool people. I don't know how to describe it outside of like, they make a lot of money, and sometimes some of us just want to be them because they have made so much money. But the overall point of this episode is to have fun. And so when I think about people that I admire, I always think about their morning routines, right? It's a little like, where do they start the day? Where is their mind at in the very beginning of the day? And I think for a lot of people, and for myself, when people tell me to stop comparing, I'm like, okay, but like, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, I'm marketing myself, I'm looking at what other people are doing. How can I consume less and create more? So my challenge is for you to spend the first 30 minutes of your day not looking at your phone, but just picking up a actual pen and paper, not on a screen, not on your iPad or anything like that, but a pen and paper, and to start writing. It could be your idea for your show. It could be just whatever you dreamt about the night before. It could be anything that really comes to mind, but just the idea of less comparison to me is just breaking the habit of starting the day always looking and consuming at what other people are doing. So yes, you're very unique. You have a unique perspective. No one else has lived the life that you lived. But if we spend 8, 10, 12 hours a day looking at other people's lives, I feel like, at least personally for me, it's very hard to hear the voice in my head or to really know where I stand out if I'm always listening to other people. So this is a challenge. This is our first think like a producer challenge. If you co-sign, Christine, do you co-sign on this? Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, let's do it. So we are challenging you to spend the first half an hour of your day just writing, taking notes, whatever that looks like for you, but just creating, kind of using your voice a little bit in the morning. And what you can do is tag us at Think Like a Producer. Maybe grab a screenshot once you now pick up your phone like you're going to do anyway in the morning, and just say, hey, I took the time to create this morning. I did something for myself this morning. We'd love to see it. We'd love to continue to spread this message of just creating before you consume. But to me, comparison is a habit. And that's really what I want to establish here. For me to break any habit that I have, it has to be replaced by something else. But that's what we want to make sure that we emphasize: your unique perspective, your unique voice, and letting it come out a little bit more than watching other people. Another good idea would be to stop watching people in the industry that you love, right? Like, I absolutely love self-improvement and motivation. But Christina and I even had a conversation this morning about it. You know, it's interesting to see when you step outside of your field, the new ideas that get sparked by looking at other industries and other people and other perspectives that you're just not used to, just to spark something different, you know, whether it's a color scheme or even sometimes for me, it's an edit. When I look at something that's completely outside of the influencers that I typically work with, it just gives me more ideas on how to be creative and unique. So we'd love for you to stop comparing yourself. We know it's not the easiest task in the world, but if you can start to break some habits, to change some things up, we think that you can continue to let your voice out a little bit more and really start to fall in love with your uniqueness and your own perspective. But Christine, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I love what you shared because, yes, we did talk about it, but also these reminders we need all the time. Hopefully, you've heard this before. We're just your daily dose today. Honest to goodness, it is a problem of our age that we have so much ability to compare each other. And while that can be helpful on a certain level, it can become very unhelpful on another. And we know you know what we're talking about. So, yes, one of the reasons to do the show that you want is because you will be able to get way more creative ideas when you are actually letting your own creative juice, your own creative life force within you lead the way. If you are too focused on the way other people are doing things, and I've seen this time and again, I know you have as well, Tiff, it can paralyze you. Quite literally, it will just stop you from doing anything because you just get, you know what I'm talking about, you get in that rut where you're just only looking at what other people are doing. You just get totally overwhelmed with I can't do anything until I figure out how to do what they did and they did and they did and they did. Bad news. So yeah, as you know, kind of a mindset tool, a mental health tool, but more than that, an actual strategic production tool. Make sure that when you're doing your creative sessions, you're planning, you're looking at episode ideas, and you're actually envisioning what kind of content you're going to create for your audience, that you're doing it from a place of innate creativity. Yeah, you're going to get great ideas from other people, but just like Tiff said, taking that time in the morning, or maybe you're a night owl, so you do this at night, where you're actually writing down your own ideas, you're letting it kind of go through your own filter, and you're like, I saw so do that, but I actually realized the way I would do it would be this way. That's where some of my best ideas have come from. And, kind of in response to the industry I work in, I've had to develop my own skill sets where I have limits on how much inspiration I take in. And I've learned to really check in with my gut and be like, okay, I've reached my limit for today. No more screens, no more social media, no more podcasts. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes I've taken in too many podcasts in a day. And I'm like, I gotta pull back and I just need to journal. I need to go for a walk. I need to do a puzzle and just like let my mind go and just kind of go into that state of creative boredom, as they say. So, yeah, before I go off on a very long tangent about creative skill sets, I just want to reiterate like, this is an actual production strategy. It's not just like a feel good, self development tip, even though it's also that. We've seen this time and again. It is super helpful to unplug and let your own ideas come to you and trust your intuition and know that the message that you're trying to share and the way you're trying to share it is unique for a reason. That's a good thing. And a lot of this just comes with time and practice. So you might try some ideas that you love and they really are awesome. And you might try some ideas where you're like, that did not take off at all. That's fine. That's fine. That's great. That's helpful. Don't worry about it. Just be consistent with the process. Make sure you're focusing on things that really bring you a lot of joy and excitement. If you notice you're getting into that comparison trap, unplug, put up some healthy boundaries, and that is what will really help you stay in it with the long run and serve your audience in a really important way. And, one day there will be a lot of really awesome opportunities if you stick with it, but one day at a time. It's going to work out if you just run at your own pace. Okay, so there's our episode for this week. Bit of a pep talk, bit of a reality check, hopefully a lot of encouragement. If you enjoyed the episode, we would love to see a review of yours on Apple Podcasts. It makes a huge difference for other people to realize this show is a good show and we're subscribing to. So thank you for all your ratings and reviews. We really appreciate them. Of course, subscribe on YouTube, share it with someone that you know is actually thinking about this and you've been talking to about this. Hopefully it will be supportive to them. And we will see you on the next episode.
Check out this next episode. We go over the pros and cons of having a personal brand.
And you had, let me say that better.
A different way to say it, but so I just needed a moment. Okay, all right. Good times in the editing. Sweet.